it's going to, sorry, the recording was delayed, but now we're recording. Um, so I'll back off just 1 second. So in today's presentations, our first presenter is going to be Karen Perhofer. In this talk, Karen will give a short introduction to Joseph Cornell's interactive way of environmental education. She will demonstrate how adapting Joseph Cornell's education plays to legumes and soil biodiversity. And she'll lead us in 2 interactive ways of teaching about legumes. Karen is an agroecologist by heart, working currently as an environmental educator and project coordinator at the Global Field Berlin organization, where she implemented the Soil Biodiversity Project last year. And before, she spent almost 10 years in research finding answers in grassland and agricultural landscape biodiversity, as well as legume nitrogen dynamics. So I'm honored to allow her to take over the show and begin her presentation. I'll hand it to you, Karen.
Yeah, thank you, Alex, for the introduction. Yes, I'm gonna share my presentation with you. Let's see, can you let me know, Alex, if you
Yes,
can see
we
it?
can see it.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and let's see. Is it in full screen?
At the moment, it's not,
No,
but I think it might. Oh, now it is. It is now.
a little delayed. Yeah, but great. Yes, I'm Karin. Yes, I'm an environmental educator at the moment at the Global Field in Berlin, where I do environmental education on the topics of soil and agriculture. And Weltacker Berlin, Global Field Berlin, is also called 2,000 square meter. And why 2,000 square meter? If we take all the cropland on Earth, that is 1.6 hectares, and divide it by the number of people on Earth, 8 billion, we'll get 2,000 square meters that each of us has theoretically for our needs, for example, food, clothes, etc. Interestingly, 2,000 square meters would be enough if we would have an equal distribution. Nobody would have to starve. You will find more information on our website about the 2,000 square meter concept and idea. But I'm here today to talk about legumes and how legume plays can support learning. I think I do not need to talk about why it's important to educate about legumes in this group. Therefore, I would dive immediately into the how to educate about legumes. During an environmental course, an environmental education course I took some years ago, I learned about the flow learning sequence of Joseph Cornell. It immediately caught my interest because he suggests structuring education programs into different interactive activities, depending on the way people learn. So he published this book called Sharing Nature, where he presents the flow learning framework and describes 54 nature activities, each one very stimulating and exciting. I won't go into the details of Joseph Cornell's flow learning framework, but just in short, from his experience in education, he realized that a certain sequence of activities works best regardless the age of the group, the mood of the group, or their culture. And the flow learning sequence is it's divided into 4 stages. And it starts with stage 1, where the enthusiasm of the group is awakened. Without enthusiasm, people learn very little and can never have a meaningful experience of nature. Awakened enthusiasm makes learning fun, instructive, and experiential, and establish a rapport between teacher, student, and the subject. Then there is the stage 2, which is focus attention. It helps students become attentive and receptive to nature. Learning depends on focused attention. At the stage 3, offer direct experience. During an immersive nature experience, students make a deep connection with an aspect of nature by bringing us face to face with a bird, a wooded hill, or any natural object. Offer direct experience activities give us intuitive experiences of nature. And then in stage 4, there is sharing inspiration, reflecting and sharing with others, strengthen and clarify one's experience. So for my last project last year, I wanted to develop activities on soil biodiversity and agriculture. So I went through the list of nature activities in this book and found 2 activities that I could possibly adapt to the topic soil biodiversity and agriculture. So one was called Wild Animal Scrabble, which I turned into the game Which Soil Organism Am I? The second was Natural Processes, out of which I developed a kind of theater about the nitrogen fixation process of legumes. In the book, both are part of step 1, awaken enthusiasm. However, for the first one, I added additional parts of the play, which could actually be focus attention, step 2, and share experience, step 3. I would like shortly present both activities to you. How does the which soil organism am I work? So I will move on to the next slide. Each participant gets a picture of a soil organism fixed to their back with a clothespin, as you see in the pictures of my presentation. The participants do not know which organism they are. The goal is to ask other participants questions that can be answered with yes or no, and that can help them find out how they look like or who they are. When everybody has an idea how they look like or who they are, I present a photo gallery of copies of the same photographs and additional ones to increase the difficulty. And each participant has to find her or himself. As a next step, I asked participants to place themselves in a line from the smallest to the biggest soil organism. This always leads to great discussions between the participants. Then in the last step, I ask each participant, each soil organism, to present themselves by telling the name, which is written on the back of the photograph if they couldn't figure out their name from the photograph. And as also the function they think they have in the soil and for agriculture. It was very interesting to observe the group every time. Some people told me that they could really relate to the soil organisms they were, which was very funny, very interesting. What are the learning goals of this play? To establish relationships between participants, teachers, soil organisms, and agriculture, to awaken curiosity about soil biodiversity, and to get to know at least some names and functions of soil organisms and their importance for agriculture. So I would like to play this game now with you. I have not done that before, so let's see how it will work out. I will need 3 people, 3 volunteers who will get a photograph on their back. Like that means they will not be able to see the photograph. The rest of the participants will see the photograph and I will answer the questions of the 3 people with yes and no. So I will ask now in the group, is there anybody there who would like to volunteer to be one of the 3 people who will get a photograph on their back, like they will be the ones who do not see the photograph. Could you maybe make a hand sign? Alex, could you help to check if
Yes, it
hands
looks
are
like Molly is volunteering is one. Um, Nicola is volunteering as two,
great?
and we're still looking for a third
Yes,
volunteer.
it's nothing bad. It would be great if a third one could put a hand
And
up.
Eva's volunteering as a third.
Great,
Okay.
thank you very much. So, Alex, will you try to make a break, to put those three into a breakout room,
Yes, I can do that.
so that they
So I
cannot look at the screen when I show the picture? Yeah.
okay.
So,
So
yeah,
those three have been invited to join a breakout room. If you could accept that, it'll
yeah,
take you directly into. And it looks like they,
they left.
yes.
Yes, great. So then we can make sure that they do not see the pictures. So the rest of the participants here, they can now look at the picture that I show here, and this is the picture the three volunteers have on now on their back, and they do not know. They do not know which picture they have on their back, and they need to ask questions to us to figure out what kind of soil organism they have on their back. So we answer yes or no to their questions, and then let's see if they get an idea who they are. So I move on with my slides or go back,
Mhm.
and then we can invite them back in. Alex.
Great. Okay. I will go let them know that they
Yeah.
are.
If if anybody has a questions regarding the game or what we do now, please ask. If there's anything that is not clear, please let me know.
Okay. They will join us again in 30 seconds. The break room is
Oh, okay.
closing. Mhm.
There's a countdown. Yeah. But yeah, you can see on the pictures that I placed here that I think it's yeah, all three are actually from the phase where they do not know which soil organism they are, and then you walk around and ask one person maybe two questions. Do I have six legs? Am I round? Am I long? So to figure out how you could look like. It's some are easy to find out. Some are more quite difficult, that quite impossible, almost impossible to find out. But yeah, the goal is only to somehow know how how they look like. So to be able to recognize afterwards when you see the pictures on the ground, placed on the ground.
They should be back, by the way. Yes.
Your soil
Nicola,
organisms are here, yes?
great. So yeah, I shortly now tell you that you did, or do you the three volunteers, they can now ask questions to the whole group, like questions that can be asked answered with yes or no. It can be like, I have 12 legs. Do I have 12 legs? Am I green? Or questions like that to, in the end, to somehow have an idea how you look like. So you can maybe, or we all unmute ourselves so that we all can yeah, ask and answer. The questions is only the 3 volunteers who ask, but the rest can answer. So please go ahead, ask questions.
Am I long?
No,
Or maybe
Am I round?
a bit long. Or
A bit long.
and
Am I round?
Mm, yes,
possibly
yes and no, yeah.
Do I have legs?
no,
Do I have legs?
You
no.
you you all 3 have the same soil organism on your back. Yeah, I
Okay.
forgot
Okay. It's
to
just
tell you.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
to make it
Easier.
easy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we eat dead organic matter or live organisms?
Oops, that's only yes, yes, yes or no.
Okay. Do I eat dead organic matter?
Instead of organic matter. No,
Plants? Do I eat plants?
I need to think. Um, the the plants hearts. It's hard to it's hard to answer.
No problem. You have jokers, I guess.
Um,
Am I an insect? No, I don't have legs, you
no
said.
legs.
Right?
D am I multicolored?
Yes,
In the picture, yes, yeah,
Uh-huh. Um,
Am I less than 1 millimeter?
yes. Does
Am
any
I unicellular?
does anybody else from the
huh?
want to ask to answer?
am I visible by the human eye?
no,
Mhm. Are we a bacteria?
Mhm.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't want to answer everything because I know. So from the other
Uh,
from the other people come out with answers to help them.
are we fungi?
I think a fungi would be much, much bigger. So,
Alex, help out.
No.
yes. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think so. I'm not familiar with this specific organism. Yeah.
You guys aren't very helpful. Uh, give me a clue.
Am
But
I
but maybe from the should we try to see if you can recognize yourself from
on
a
the picture?
picture?
Yeah, show us the picture, maybe.
Okay. So this is yeah. This
Oh,
is,
okay. These are all the pictures.
yeah, these are
Um,
pictures. Now you need to find
which one we
the
are?
soil organism you are. Which one do you think you have on your back?
Um,
Said we are not visible, right? By the human eye.
these are, there must be a magnified
Right.
one. Um,
Multicolored.
multicolored.
Yeah.
It's difficult to see what the bottom row, the second one is. Is that a spider or?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think it must be I must think the blue one, that looks like little bits of plastic. And then there's the soil around it.
And the one at the bottom right, I have no idea what this can be.
The light bulb.
The
Yeah.
light
The
bulb.
yellow light.
It looks
The
like
yellow
a
light bulb
bulb.
or balloon.
Or is it the egg of something that's
Maybe it's an egg.
sticking to some
Yeah.
part of plant?
And
But I
what
think
about that orange guy above it?
well,
Hmm.
that's a little a mite. I think it's got it's looks like
Oh,
it's
it's got legs. It's got legs.
eight
Yeah.
legs. So
It's got legs, so that doesn't
yeah,
count.
and the one above that is also a little maybe a larvae of something, and then there's a um,
Okay, the legs eliminate legs.
like legs. So not a mole. It's not the.
Are we very much related to legumes or not? Not
I think.
specifically.
Quite related to legumes if you need help.
Mhm.
Oh,
Mhm.
Maybe we lock in an answer in the next 20 seconds. Is that
Yeah, thank
reasonable?
you, Alex. Yeah.
Are we fixing nitrogen on
Yes.
the air? Ah, so we are the nice guys, the nice bacteria doing the
Yeah.
symbiosis.
Yeah, which ones are they?
that maybe the blue rods up there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know about the color? Is it just to magnify, to make it more visible, or
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
not natural.
Yeah. Not the natural
Mm,
color.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
a bit tricky
Nice.
there. Yeah, but I
Mhm.
think it's a nice photograph. Yeah. Yes, rhizobial bacteria, you three are, yeah, very useful.
I understand why you could not answer the question about eating dead or alive organic matter because it's like fed by the plant with sugars, so it's a bit in between. Kind of.
Yes, yes, I
Mhm.
was tricked.
Yeah.
But some
Okay,
really good pictures there. Yeah.
let's move on. Yeah, thank you for participating. Now let's move on to the nitrogen fixation of legumes theater. In this activity, participants act out natural processes. In our case, the nitrogen fixation process of legumes. What I did was I wrote a kind of a real fairy tale, which I called The Wonder of the Bean Plant. Like once upon a time, there was a farmer who planted a bean. And then each participant will get a role, which is presented by a picture, a photograph placed around the neck. And for example, the sun, a bean, a root, nitrogen atoms, rhizobial bacteria, nodules, farmer. So, and while I tell the story, the participants listen to me and act out the story about a farmer who sows a bean, the sun shines on the bean sprouts, photosynthesizes, grows roots, uses up all the nitrogen in the soil, gets hungry, lures rhizobial bacteria to its roots, give them sugar and builds nodules, the house for the bacteria. And bean plant gets nitrogen from the rhizobial bacteria, etc. It gives participants an understanding of how the quite complex nitrogen fixation process of legumes works. Yes, and you could see in the pictures before that the participants were from very small to adults. It was great how they could really join in like showing like acting this process. Yeah, one was a farmer, like a 4-year-old kid who really said afterwards that or like to his parents apparently that he always wanted to be a farmer so he could finally be a farmer. And yes, I was also told that another kid told the ant that about the sun that shines on the bean on the bean plant and produces sugar. So it's yeah, I was quite surprised how it really is a great learning outcome. So in my second last slide, I would shortly just mention some things that what did not work in my work. I plan to play the soil biodiversity game, which soil organism am I game, with a group of teenagers, a school class, and I said, okay, let's play this game. And then they said, "Oh, do we need to play a game?" They really were not up for games. So I learned that you should not always call it a game. Maybe call it an activity, because I managed to start and play, and they really actually had fun in the end playing the game. Another point is for kids, it's important not to go too much into detail. So, of course, adapting the games for specific ages. Also with this, which soil organism am I to like I could not play the part like they should figure out the size and stand in line with kindergarten kids. It's only the first part that I played with the kindergarten kids. And sometimes it's also important to explain certain terms beforehand. Like once I talked about organic matter without explaining it beforehand. So always thinking, okay, do those kids know, can they know about this term? So, but what did work? There was almost always interest in joining the plays. Just the one time with the teenagers where the interest was not so great, but in the end it worked out anyway. And I think people all ages are more or less interested in joining a play. Then what I read lately, also because I wrote a project application that it helps a lot to combine art and education activities. There are actually several research papers on that, and I actually just got a project funded where we do this combination of art and education activity. We are going to with the groups, public groups, we are going to first get to know soil biodiversity and their importance for agriculture, and then each person, each individual in the group will become a soil organism, and then we with the people we develop a kind of story which in the end we will record in a kind of audio play. I'm curious to see how those workshops will finally develop. And then one last point. And I think anything that speaks to our senses helps during education activities. Like when I talked about legumes, if you have any clover field around, like dig it out and check if there are nodules on that several times. That surprised people during my tours. And they said, "Oh, I know, I heard about this nitrogen fixation of legumes, but I've never actually seen them." So, this is a great way to make it real. So, yes, thank you for listening. Thank you to my colleagues and the funding body here in Berlin. Yeah, thank you to you all for participating at the game.
And thank you, Karen. Yes, thank you for presenting. It was a really fun and interactive way to learn about educating on beans and legumes for all different ages. Karen, if you don't mind to stop sharing your screen,
Yeah.
and then we will introduce our next presenter. And thank you again so much for that presentation. Okay, So our next presenter is Nicolas Carton. According to Nicolas, all agronomists should be strong advocates for legumes. He will present a course for master's students in agronomy, the learning activities they organized, and how it allowed the students to better understand the benefits of including more legumes in cropping systems. Nicolas is an agronomist and self-proclaimed Pulse ambassador. He has been working on legumes in academic research in France and Sweden, and as a crop advisor on soybeans, lentils, chickpeas, and cowpeas in Germany and Spain. He coordinated the Global Bean Show Gardens and several Global Bean webinars and publications that are available on the Global Bean Project's website. And we can provide that link in the chat. And so in recent years, Nicolas has organized several cooking workshops to help people include more pulses in their daily cooking, and now teaches agronomy to master students in France. So I'll let him take it away, and we thank him for being here.
Thanks a lot, Alex. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks to you all for being here. I will try to be short. As Alex said, I'm going to present the course I prepared for master students. So Alex already introduced me, so I'm going to skip this one. So I'm teaching master students in French engineering school, which is the same level as first years of master. And I had this year in the group 27 students. In the second year of their study, which corresponds to the first years of the masters, they can choose between 4 topics. So the 27 students who were with me for that course chose the specific topic of legumes. And the title of the course was Reasoning Cropping Systems with Economic and Environmental Performances. And then within this broad topic, we focused on legumes. And when I started working there, my colleagues thought that I could take over this course, which had a focus on viticulture, so wine growing, for the past 2 years. And given where I worked before this, they thought I could do it on legumes. So just you understand that it's not in the program, in the curriculum, that the students have to learn about legumes specifically. It's just because there was the opportunity of this course, which also can make us reflect on the fact that lots of agronomists don't hear that much about legumes in their studies. Of course, they hear about it here and there, but not with a specific course like the one I'm presenting today. And just also for the context, the course was in 2 periods, as you see on the slide, 6 days in September and 7.5 days in December. So it's at the same time very short, and you already have the time to do several activities like I'm going to present. So I chose to divide it like this. The first part with the broad introduction and introducing the challenges. Why is it important to talk specifically about legumes? Then in the second part, I wanted them to learn about physiological, agronomic, and ecological processes linked to legume crops. Then we had on-farm case studies for them to apply new knowledge. And then we had an opening. And the course was a combination of lectures and practicals with the teachers, some lectures by external experts, professionals. The students conducted some literature search, and they also had some field work on the case studies. So for part 1, I wanted to tell them what makes legumes special, what are the agronomic and environmental challenges. And they also had a lecture by a PhD student who made them aware of some specific issues with new value chains, like taking the examples of some projects in France. What are the challenges for people for supply chains where farmers would like to grow more legumes and they need to build the outputs, for instance. So for instance, I was showing them what I call the European legume paradox, showing them some data about the fact that legumes have benefits for cropping systems, nutrition, and autonomy, but they are not grown on big surfaces. They are not very much consumed in our diets as humans, and we import most of the ones we eat, be it for human food or for animal feed. So that was a bit the starting point to motivate them. As Karen was showing, we need to motivate the students first before they get interested enough to actively engage in the learning. So I was showing them why they need to be advocates for legumes. That's because of this paradox, and I was quite happy to see that they did understand the numerous benefits, and they were also increasingly aware of all the challenges. Why is the situation as it is? And I was asking them in the final assignment, and I was quite happy to see that a lot of them, most of them were able to explain where are the lock-ins in the current situation, and why don't we grow more legumes if they are so great for many different levels. And then I wanted them to learn about more specific processes. So they were divided into 3 groups, one focusing on nitrogen fixation, so the nitrogen nutrition and nitrogen pre-crop effect of legumes. Another group was focusing on intercrops, so the practice of having 2 different species, so legumes and cereals most often. And they studied competition, facilitation, and complementarity, which is about the ecological interactions in those intercrops. And the third group focused on the management of pests, diseases, and weeds in legume crops. So they had to do a synthesis of scientific and technical references, and the objective was for them to become experts on their subject. And then they would present their subject as a pedagogic lecture to the other groups. So they were put in the position of being the teachers for a 30-minute lecture. So they had to do something easily understandable, citing their sources, etc. And they got feedback from an external expert, someone who is doing research on that topic on the day of their oral, and they could improve the oral to do it a second time, where the external expert was actually the class of the 3rd-year students, so the students who are the most advanced, who could also give them feedback. And we see the group work as a 2-fold objective. So they have to learn how to work in groups, because they are going to become engineers, agronomists. They will have to have this capacity to work in groups. But also we saw group work as a way to foster the learning processes. So they could, for instance, read many more articles than if they would be alone, and then share the synthesis of the articles and build the course together. And that worked quite well. I'm showing you just 3 slides of the courses they prepared as examples. I'm not going to go into details, and it's in French. So this was one slide about nitrogen fixation. They showed here on the left the different percentage of fixed nitrogen in different species. That was important for them to understand. And then on the right, it's just a diagram showing that when there is nitrogen in the soil, legumes fix less nitrogen. They tend to rely less on their capacity to fix nitrogen. So all these kind of processes were important because they had no knowledge of it before the course. Then the second group did something really nice about the complementarity in legume cereal intercrops. I'm not going into details, but they were able to understand that there may be less biomass in a sole crop pea compared to cereal and pea, but in the legume, there may be less legume biomass, sorry, but then the legume would rely even more on nitrogen fixation. So that's the meaning of what you see in the graph. And then a third example about weed management. Also, I took here also the example of intercropping, where they understood that intercrops have a better capacity to control weeds than legume sole crops, for instance, based on scientific articles that they gathered based on suggestions from us. Then there was this third part where they went to farms, also in 3 groups. You can see on the pictures. So they were talking with the farmers on the fields, taking a look at the crops. Here you can see some thistles in a legume pasture. It was alfalfa. And on the right, you see they were lucky enough that this farm also does bread, and in the afternoon they were not using the room, so they could work there on the data given by the farmer, so the diagrams of the crop rotation, everything that is done on this cropping system. Then they had to choose methods, some indicators to evaluate the cropping system. They collected data through interviews, measurements. For instance, they looked at which weed species are in the crops. They analyzed this data, and then they suggested some adaptation of the current cropping system that they discussed with the farmers and had to write a synthesis. So just very briefly, the topics that they chose based on the current challenges on those farms. In one farm, they were looking at improving the compromise between cost, workload, agronomic benefits, weed management, and the impact on the soil, because this farmer had installed cover crops, and he could see that it was taking a lot of work for him, so he was interested in having this diagnosis. The second one was working, you can see the crop rotation on the diagram, was working on a very long crop rotation in organic farming with lots of legumes. And then the question was more, how do we manage weeds, pests, and diseases in a system that requires legumes almost every year? So the work of the students was, for instance, to identify in this rotation where the legumes are. There can be the main crop. They can be also sown as a cover crop between two main crops. And then what specific diseases, for instance, can build up if you have barely any break between legumes in a crop rotation. And the third group was working on a specific system where cereals are grown in an alfalfa cover crop that stays alive during the growing of the cereals. Then they were, as a kind of opening, they interviewed some researchers in Spain, Germany, and Sweden. It was for them to practice English also, which is important for them. Most of them have not a very good level in English. And they could also ask questions on how the work of researchers is and how they design their research project and their experiments. And this worked quite well. In the beginning, they were a bit afraid and scared, of preparing this in English, but they prepared their questions and they were quite happy with the answers they got. So to sum up, as Karen says, yes, it's important to motivate in the very start. So the first lectures and the first introduction on the farm was quite important in building up the motivation. As you could see, there was the goal to diversify the learning activities through presentations, lectures with experts, farm visits, writing a report, etc. Overall, we were 5 teachers involved. I was the coordinator, but 5 colleagues helped me, 9 external experts. We went to 4 farms. We used the online tool Challenge Me so that the students could give each other also some kind of feedback. That worked quite well. And then I was happy about the participation and the learning and the production of the students, but most importantly, I could see really throughout the course that they improved several skills, be it working in groups, writing reports, preparing presentations, but also on the specific topic of legumes. They knew barely anything before the course, and I'm not going to say that they were super expert in the end, but at least they understood the challenges and why it's important, and they got a lot of new knowledge. So yeah, that was positive. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Thank you for that presentation, Nicolas. I think with that, we would love to open the floor to any questions for either presenter from the audience. So feel free to either raise your hand or unmute yourself and jump in with a question, or you can send a question in the chat and I'm happy to ask it for you as well. So we'll give ourselves a few minutes to ask questions. Does anyone have a question?
Hi, I have a question. So thank you for this very nice presentation. I was wondering, because you started in your introduction saying that legumes is not a popular topic in schools, and I was wondering if you could elaborate a bit more and why that is.
Let's say that they study agronomy, so at some point they will hear about the specific features of legumes and why they're important, but without specific courses like this, or without, if they are not going to be working on a farm that has a specific challenge with legumes, they may go through their studies without really diving more in the details of how legumes work, why they should be grown more, etc. So depending on the programs, but in our school, lots of students are more focused on animal farming, and yeah, I think most of them actually become agronomists without having looked at legumes in a more depth.
Do you think maybe we're missing tools to try to bring this subject to light?
Yeah, I guess the data is not missing, and there is a big body of research advocating for legumes, but yeah, I think one of the reasons why it's so important that agronomists are also convinced about legumes is that they can be the ones also pushing for them in the cropping systems, in the advice to farmers and in the supply chains. So yeah, I don't know if it's tools or it's more that the system is so locked in around cereals, as main crops for arable farming, that also in the schools they would be more often in the center. Like teachers may take examples mostly with cereals and the main crops, and you see all the crops that have a smaller area, they are not as often taken as examples, so students hear less from them. I think it's a pity because those are the crops that we need to talk about more, I think.
Thank you.
Great. Are there any other questions?
I just have a comment because this wasn't the direct subject that you were addressing today, but the role of legumes, excuse me, in human nutrition. I'm a chef. I think it's very important for people to find exciting and delicious ways to use legumes at every meal, and the effect of climate change and the replacement of the artificial fertilizers. These are all three excellent reasons to become more leguminaceous.
Yes, definitely. And I
I'm
can
not
see
sure that's a word.
Alex makes the transition
Yes,
to our next
that was
part,
that
because
was
that's the
actually
perfect transition. Yeah.
yes, Molly, that was a perfect transition. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Great. So we did want to conclude this series of presentations on educating about legumes with exactly that. And one of the most strategic ways to teach about legumes is through cooking. And so we want to present this question and actually hear from the folks who attended on what workshop ideas or effective ways you all have in communicating pulses to people and using through daily cooking practices. So I'll give everyone a moment to read this prompt, and then we can spend the last 5 minutes or so discussing this. So Molly, that was perfect, actually.
Hummus. Hummus. Hummus has become everyone's darling favorite, but they don't realize that it's a legume.
Molly, would you like to elaborate on maybe stuff that you do as a chef in this area?
Well, I do, now that I'm retired, I do a lot of volunteer work for Slow Food and for lots of other organizations. And I pretty much always make vegan meals based on legumes. And people are shocked that that things taste so good. And there's a world full of these. You don't have to look far. Every cuisine has delicious. The tasting good is very important. Delicious foods that have legumes as a base, even if you have to use what I call meat as a condiment, a tiny bit of meat and a lot of legumes. Like if you put a little ham in a split pea soup. But basically, that's how I show people. They eat it. And then they want the recipe.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing.
Maybe just quickly to build up on this, I've also animated some cooking workshops before I became an agronomy teacher. And one thing that worked very well for me is presenting not hummus as one recipe, but as more as a concept, like showing, like empowering people kind of in the fact that they can design their own, create their own recipe once they understand what makes a hummus good. It doesn't have to be chickpea, can be lentils, doesn't have to be olive oil, can be any other fat. It doesn't have to be cumin, and you know what I mean. So you understand, you break up the recipe in some more general concept, and then that's what you can share, and you can bring ingredients in the workshop so that people design their own recipe based on those kind of building blocks of hummus-like preparations. And I could see that helped people think out of the box, like Tule is writing, discover that they can create and that they don't have to follow recipes. And I think for lots of people it's a switch in the way they cook, and it allows them to use more legumes also, because this works for hummus and spreads, but this works for soups and stews and desserts and salads and everything, so bringing this mindset in the workshops.
Definitely. This is making me hungry. I'm glad we're almost done so we can all make some good legume soups and hummuses. I think, yes, if anyone wants to take the last minute, before the last minute to add any additional thoughts, please feel free to raise your hand or
Yeah,
chime in. Mhm.
Can I?
Yes, please.
I just wanna share that I joined several legume dinners last year as a participant, more also partly contributing, but mainly enjoying meals which legumes which I haven't tried before, and like they were included in the starter, in the main dish, and in the dessert. So and I just thought, yeah, this is really inspired me to use them more in my cooking, and inspired me in ways how to introduce them in more in my cuisine. And so organizing legume dinners for people, that's my suggestion. Yeah.
Wonderful. Sandra, you have your hand up. Feel free to chime in.
Hello. My English is really very bad, but I try it. Nicola, I'm very glad to see you again because we met in Karlsruhe, in the south of Germany, near the of France. And we have a restaurant there, a social restaurant, and we cook nearly every day with legumes. And yes, since 2 years, we have a lot of experience with it, and we cook without meat. And therefore, suit? No. With the planetary health diet, we offer our meals, yes, really, you say sane, healthy, really healthy for everyone, and not too expensive too. And I try to develop the value chain of legumes in Karlsruhe. It's a project financed from the Ministry of Agriculture. And I have now 4 agriculture 4 farmers who tried to product beans and lentils with more or less success. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And if you would like to share the work that you're doing with the group, feel free to email info@globalbeans, and we can involve that work in our next newsletter, or we can write a publication or an article about the farmer restaurant connections that you're cultivating. All right, great. With that, I think we will close out. We're right at the end of our session. I just want to thank our presenters one last time. Thank you both for being here and for presenting, educating on beans. And thank you to all of our attendees who joined us this evening to learn about legumes. And the last thing I want to share is that we are going to continue this series of public meetings and are planning to meet again in May. So mark your calendars, and we hope to meet on May 20th at the same time to learn about another subject involving legumes, which we will lock in the next couple of weeks and next month and send out information on in the following months. So May 20th will be our next public meeting. Thanks again for everyone for attending, and have a great rest of your evening. I hope you are able to enjoy some legumes for dinner. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.